It's 1970, and aviation is at a turning point. Boeing's giant 747 is stealing headlines. The queen of the skies. But for most airlines, it's simply too much airplane. Too many seats. Too much fuel. Too much risk. What airlines really need is something smaller, leaner, but still revolutionary. McDonnell Douglas promised exactly that. Their DC-10 would bring wide-body comfort, 3 powerful engines, and lower operating costs. It was pitched as the jet that would outsmart Boeing and crush Lockheed's rival L-1011. TriStar. This was supposed to be McDonnell Douglas's crowning achievement. Instead, it became one of aviation's darkest cautionary tales. This is the story of the DC-10, the jet that promised everything, delivered tragedy, and changed the skies forever. The story begins in 1967. The Boeing 747 is about to make its debut, and the world is watching. A giant that can carry more than 400 passengers, but at a staggering cost. Airlines are skeptical. Most look at the 747 and think the same thing. We need something smaller. The race is on to build the perfect wide-body. Bigger than a narrow-body, but far more efficient than the 747. 2 main contenders step forward. Lockheed with its elegant L-1011 TriStar, and McDonnell Douglas with the DC-10. McDonnell Douglas makes a bold gamble. While rivals experiment with twin-engine designs, they choose 3. Why 3? Because in the 1970s, ETOPS regulations were a massive roadblock. Lose 1 engine on a twin, and you might not make it to an alternate airport. Regulators simply wouldn't allow those jets to cross oceans or fly certain remote routes, but not everyone agreed. In Europe, a new consortium called Airbus was quietly working on the A300, the world's first twin-engine wide-body. At the time, most airlines dismissed it. With ETOPS restrictions in place, a twin seemed like a dead end for long-haul flying. But in the long run, it would prove to be the shape of things to come. For McDonnell Douglas, though 3 engines felt like the sweet spot. Enough redundancy to fly almost anywhere, but still more efficient than a 4-engine jumbo. The DC-10's Trijet promised a holy grail. Lower fuel burn than the 747, more range than a twin, and freedom to serve nearly any route on Earth. For airlines, it was just right. American Airlines became the launch customer, ordering 25 DC-10s for transcontinental routes. United quickly followed with 30, Continental with 15. These weren't just purchases. They were bets on the future of aviation. McDonnell Douglas moved at breakneck speed from Americans' initial request in 1967 to first flight in 1970 to passenger service in 1971, just 4 years. That aggressive timeline put enormous pressure on Boeing and forced Lockheed to rush its competing TriStar. And here's a detail most people miss: the DC-10's cargo hold. McDonnell Douglas designed it to be unusually spacious, maximizing revenue potential for airlines. A clever edge over competitors. But as we'll see, it was also the seed of disaster. At the time, it looked like a clever advantage. Later, it would prove catastrophic. By 1973, the DC-10 had become the backbone of long-haul fleets worldwide. KLM flew them across the Atlantic. Japan Airlines across the Pacific, Swissair throughout Europe. McDonnell Douglas believed the DC-10 would cement their dominance over Boeing and Lockheed and establish them as the world's premier aircraft manufacturer. The future looked limitless. But revolutionary aircraft demand revolutionary solutions. And some solutions come with hidden dangers. Most aircraft cargo doors open inward, held shut by cabin pressure. It's a natural fail-safe design. But the DC-10's doors? They open outward, maximizing that valuable cargo space airlines loved. The trade-off: this design demanded a flawless locking system. Latches and pins had to withstand immense pressure differences at cruising altitude. If they failed, explosive decompression could destroy the aircraft in seconds. One man saw the danger. Dan Applegate, a McDonnell Douglas engineer who understood the physics of that door better than anyone. In 1971, he wrote an internal memo that should have stopped everything. His warning was chillingly precise. The cargo door locking mechanism is dangerously unreliable. If the door blows out, he explained, explosive decompression will collapse the cabin floor and sever critical flight control cables. His words were prophetic. But McDonnell Douglas was racing against time. The Lockheed TriStar was breathing down their necks. Orders were at stake. Redesigning the door would mean costly delays. The memo disappeared into bureaucracy. Cost and schedule pressures won. Safety lost. Then reality intruded. American Airlines Flight 96, a DC-10 departing Detroit for Buffalo with 67 souls on board, climbing through 11,000 feet when Applegate's nightmare became real. The cargo door blew out with explosive force. The cabin floor partially collapsed, jamming the flight controls exactly as predicted. Captain Bryce McCormick and his crew fought the crippled DC-10 with everything they had. Somehow, against impossible odds, they nursed the jet back to Detroit. Every life was saved. The NTSB confirmed the obvious. The cargo door design was catastrophically flawed. This should have triggered a total redesign, grounding the fleet until the problem was fixed. Instead, McDonnell Douglas issued half measures. Small viewing windows so ground crews could peek inside. Strengthened vent valves. Advisory bulletins. But they didn't change the design itself. And the fixes weren't even mandatory. The flaw remained. For nearly 2 years, hundreds of DC-10s flew with a ticking time bomb in their belly. The aviation industry was playing Russian roulette at 38,000 feet. And somewhere in the world, another DC-10 cargo door was waiting to fail. March 3, 1974. Turkish Airlines Flight 981 pushes back from Paris-Orly Airport on a Sunday morning. On board are 346 passengers and crew. A routine flight to London. It would end as the deadliest crash in aviation history up to that time. May 25, 1979. Chicago O'Hare International Airport. American Airlines Flight 191, a DC-10 bound for Los Angeles, begins its takeoff roll on runway 32R.271 passengers and crew on board. A full flight. A routine departure on a clear Friday afternoon. At first, everything looks normal. But 6,000 feet down the runway, as the jet rotates, something unimaginable happens. The left engine, a General Electric CF6, weighing over 12,000 pounds, rips free from its pylon. It flips over the top of the wing, tearing away hydraulic lines and critical wiring before crashing to the runway below. Inside the cockpit, Captain Walter Lux and his crew don't know the engine has fallen away. They only see a flood of warnings and feel the violent shudder through the airframe. For a moment, the DC-10 still climbs. But when the number one engine tore loose, it took more than power with it. It severed the hydraulic lines that controlled the leading edge slats on the left wing. At 300 feet, the worst case scenario unfolds. The left wing slats retract, destroying lift. The aircraft rolls violently to the left. Captain Lux tries to fight it, pulling full opposite aileron and rudder. But with asymmetric lift and crippled systems, the DC-10 is uncontrollable. 31 seconds after losing the engine, Flight 191 slams into an open field less than a mile from the runway. The impact is catastrophic. 271 people perish, still the deadliest aviation accident on U.S. soil. The images horrify the world. A mushroom cloud of fire and smoke towering over Chicago. Entire families gone in an instant. The DC-10 is immediately grounded worldwide. Investigators uncover the shocking truth. The engine separation wasn't caused by a design flaw in the engine itself, but by airline maintenance shortcuts. Mechanics have been using forklifts to remove and reattach DC-10 engines, a method not approved by McDonnell Douglas. The practice saved hours of work but put immense stress on the pylon mounts. Over time, microscopic cracks formed. On Flight 191, those cracks finally gave way. But to the public, these details don't matter. What they see is another catastrophic DC-10 accident. Just 5 years after Turkish Airlines Flight 981, the death jet stigma is back with a vengeance. Headlines scream of a cursed airplane. Bookings collapse. Airlines cancel orders. For McDonnell Douglas, the DC-10 is now not just a commercial failure, but a symbol of corporate hubris, a jet haunted by its design compromises and the tragedies that followed. And yet, the DC-10 story doesn't end here. Despite disaster, despite public outrage, this aircraft will go on to fly for decades. Cargo haulers, charter airlines, even major carriers kept the Trigit alive long after its reputation was destroyed. The DC-10 became a paradox, a plane both reviled and relied upon, cursed and yet indispensable dot by the early 1980s. The writing was on the wall. The DC-10, once sold as the future of long-haul flying, was now a symbol of everything airlines wanted to move away from. Its defining feature, that third engine, had gone from selling point to burden. With new ETOPS standards and leaps in engine reliability, airlines no longer needed 3 engines to cross oceans. 2 were enough, and they were cheaper to operate. Boeing 767, launched in 1982, was the perfect example of this new era. It offered similar range and capacity with lower fuel burn, reduced maintenance costs, and a far better safety reputation. Airbus followed with the A310 and later the A330, both twin-engine wide-bodies that quickly became favorites for international routes. Against this new competition, the DC-10 looked outdated and expensive. McDonnell Douglas tried to salvage the situation. They improved systems, increased efficiency, and even launched an updated version, the MD-11, with a stretched fuselage, new avionics, and better range. But the damage was already done. Airlines remembered the cargo door failures, the catastrophic accidents, and the relentless media coverage branding the DC-10 as unsafe. Public trust never fully recovered. Even passengers who didn't follow aviation closely often knew the name DC-10 and associated with disaster. Travel agents reported that many customers would still request any aircraft except a DC-10 when booking tickets. Despite all this, the DC-10 wasn't a complete failure. Once safety upgrades were implemented, it went on to log millions of flight hours and carried hundreds of millions of passengers safely for decades. Many airlines continued flying it well into the 1990s, and as it aged out of passenger service, the DC-10 found a second life as a reliable cargo aircraft for companies like FedEx and UPS. Its strong airframe and large cargo capacity made it ideal for freight operations, and many DC-10s are still flying cargo missions today. The DC-10's legacy is complicated. It was an aircraft born of bold ambition, a machine that promised to revolutionize aviation but became synonymous with tragedy. It exposed how corporate pressure, engineering compromises, and regulatory gaps could align with devastating consequences. It taught the aviation world hard lessons about safety culture, transparency, and the true cost of cutting corners. And perhaps most importantly, it changed how airplanes are built and certified forever. Cargo doors are now designed with multiple layers of fail-safe protections. Maintenance procedures are more strictly enforced. Airlines and manufacturers know that reputation, once lost, can be nearly impossible to regain. The DC-10 was supposed to be McDonnell Douglas's crowning achievement. Instead, it became a case study in how innovation without caution can lead to catastrophe. And while its successor, the MD-11, would carry the torch a little further, the DC-10's turbulent history marked the beginning of the end for McDonnell Douglas as a dominant force in commercial aviation. In the end, the jet that promised to outsmart Boeing and crush Lockheed instead became a cautionary tale, one that still shapes how we build, maintain, and fly airplanes today. Later, the Boeing 777 became everything the DC-10 had promised to be: efficient, reliable, and trusted by passengers. The Trident market didn't just decline, it collapsed. Lockheed, already reeling from weak L-101 sales and troubled engines, announced its exit from commercial aviation altogether. The TriStar proved that even brilliant engineering couldn't overcome poor timing and limited demand. Alongside the DC-10, it defined both the rise and the fall of the Trident era, a technological dead end swept aside by the twin-engine revolution by 1984. DC-10 production came to a halt. McDonnell Douglas, still wrestling with technical problems, now faced a larger truth. They weren't just fighting competitors, they were fighting a revolution they couldn't win. In a desperate attempt to salvage their commercial aviation division, they launched the MD-11 in 1990, essentially a stretched, modernized DC-10 with updated avionics. But it arrived too late and underperformed on fuel efficiency promises. Even worse, airlines worried that passengers would simply see it as a longer DC-10 and avoid booking. Meanwhile, modern twins like the Airbus A330 and Boeing 777 offer better fuel economy, lower maintenance costs, and the operational flexibility that ETOPS evolution provided. The Trident era ended not with celebration, but with quiet obsolescence. Like the TriStar, the DC-10 found unexpected salvation in second lives outside of passenger service. FedEx discovered something interesting about the jet, that unusually large cargo hold, originally designed to compete for passenger revenue, made the DC-10 perfect for freight. Away from public scrutiny, its reliability improved dramatically. FedEx eventually operated more than 60 DC-10 freighters, becoming the type's largest operator. UPS followed suit, converting passenger DC-10s into freighters. In cargo service, the DC-10 finally fulfilled some of its original promise, just not in the role anyone expected. But for McDonnell Douglas, redemption came too late. Weakened by the DC-10's commercial failure and unable to compete with Boeing and Airbus in new aircraft development, the company merged with Boeing in 1997. The merger ended Douglas's 76-year history as an independent manufacturer, leaving Boeing as America's sole large commercial aircraft producer for decades. Last passenger DC-10 retired from service in 2014 with Biman Bangladesh Airlines. FedEx operated the final DC-10 cargo flights in 2021, closing exactly 50 years of operational service. A handful survive today as aerial firefighting tankers, their powerful engines finding one final purpose: battling wildfires. But the DC-10's most important legacy isn't in cargo holds or fire suppression. It's in the fundamental transformation of aviation safety. Dan Applegate's ignored memo became required reading in engineering schools worldwide, teaching the critical importance of listening to safety concerns regardless of commercial pressure. Certification standards became exponentially more rigorous. And that, perhaps more than anything else, is the DC-10's lasting gift to aviation. The DC-10 was supposed to be McDonnell Douglas's crowning achievement. Instead, it became one of aviation's darkest cautionary tales, a jet that changed the industry not by what it achieved, but by what it cost. Before you go, the YouTube algorithm thinks you'll like this video next. So why not check it out?